What's up, guys? It's your lady, Coach Cailah, and I had the amazing opportunity to interview two wonderful women in the field of nutrition. One is a registered dietitian in the clinical field of nutrition, and the other is a theoretical research registered dietitian, PhD, genetic type nutritionist. It was freaking awesome. So obviously, we discussed how to pair genetics and nutrition, which is becoming near and dear to my heart, especially because of nutrition for Black women. Our motto is culturally and genetically different. So stay tuned to this conversation because it was great. I learned so much. And by the way, both of these women work for a company called Nutritional. Nutritional is a genetic testing company that will help pair and match your DNA to the foods that will best help you perform better. So I've got a $20 discount. Check whatever link or code below. But check out this video. I think it'll help you, and I think you will learn as much as I did. Design your body. Well, hey guys, this is Coach Cailah here with Coach Cailah TV, episode 47. So today is a really interesting topic. Sidebar, if you hear my dogs in the back, my bad. They're dogs. So today we have a really interesting topic, and this is going to be discussing nutrition and genetics. So I'm very excited. Today we have Kelly Van Gordon and we have Kristen Johnson. Dang it, I was trying to say your maiden name, Kristen Radcliffe Johnson from Nutritional. And so I'm gonna let you guys come on. Let me see, Kelly, let's have you go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are, and your background.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us, Cailah. We're excited to be here and to talk nutrition. We love talking about nutrition. So yeah, I'm Kelly. I'm a registered dietitian from Milwaukee and just started here at Nutritional. I do have a very clinical background in nutrition. So I have my undergraduate and master's degree in nutrition, and I have a lot of exposure in the hospital and working with nutrition and how that can help with diseases. But I also enjoy wellness and fitness and just helping regular people just live their best lives. So yeah.
Awesome. Kristen.
Hi, I am Kristen Radcliffe Johnson. Thank you again for having us, Coach Cailah. I have a master's in human nutrition, and then I have a PhD in nutrition, as well as I am a registered dietitian nutritionist. My background is a little different than Kelly's. I am more on the scientific research side and more in the academic or theoretical field. So I have a background working with type 2 diabetes, impaired insulin, obesity, and lipid disorders, so how we metabolize fats. And I've also worked with some different fields that are related to genomics and nutrigenomics, such as proteomics and metabolomics. So I kind of come from that angle.
Awesome. Thank you. So guys, like, this is a subject that I know very little about when it comes to genetics. I told the ladies that I barely passed that class in grad school, like barely, I'm not even gonna lie. But so this is why we want to bring experts on, and people other than just myself, so that you can hear information that is real, that is true, that is not just my personal bias, because there are some biases that I naturally have, which is totally cool. But this is specifically for nutrition for Black women. I'm really excited. If you haven't heard about nutrition for Black women, our motto is culturally and genetically different. And so that's why I felt like this was going to be absolutely perfect, because there are some differences for African Americans living in America. When it comes to nutrition, right? There are very few differences in certain things, but some I really want to get down to those and really just talk about it, figure it out, and see what is going to be the best nutrition style for you. Because a lot of times people may ask me what I'm doing, but that has nothing to do with you, your lifestyle, your body. Now, if you are me, if you're my twin, then do what I do. Otherwise, we've got to figure out, who you are, what your genes are saying, and also what your culture and what your lifestyle is saying, because all of those play a big role in who you are, how you eat, and how your body looks. So to get right into it, guys. All right. So again, the concept we're going to talk about nutrigenomics, and nutrigenomics is nutrition and genetics. Okay. So either of you, tell me about how, in general, genes affect nutrition and why it's a powerful combination.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take this one. So in a nutshell, you said it really great, Cailah, that nutrigenomics is genetics and nutrition interacting together to drive health outcomes. And so looking at how genes might affect our nutrition, at the same time being able to see how nutrition might affect our genes. So a really great example would be a gene called BCO1, which is related to vitamin A levels. So when you have changes, or we call it variants, in this BCO1 gene, you actually have a really hard time converting beta carotene, which is a nutrient found in carrots or other orange vegetables and fruits, into vitamin A and what your body needs. And so when you have this variant, since you are having a hard time making that conversion, you are more prone to having low vitamin A levels, which can be then associated with various diseases such as night blindness, poor skin conditions, and low antioxidant capacity. At the same time, we can look at genes such as a big one that people talk about, especially when they're talking about weight, is a gene called FTO. And so this gene is found in the brain, in the hypothalamus, and it actually controls appetite and your hunger levels. And so certain variants might make you more prone to gaining weight. They might make you more prone to snacking. And knowing how to modify your diet in order to accommodate or improve your health with these variants can be really powerful. At the same time, we also know when you hear eat your broccoli, one of the really good reasons to eat your broccoli is because they do contain certain components called sulforaphane and indole 3 carbinols, which can actually then go back and modify your gene expression. It can help turn on or off your genes, which is why it's associated with reduced cancer risk and other healthy outcomes.
So I've heard that with broccoli. I got two questions from that. So I've heard that with broccoli, your indole 3 carbinols, right? So if it turns off a gene, is it, I can believe that it turned off something specific that's bad, but do we know that for sure? Like, how does that work?
A lot of it has to do with, right now, evidence-based studies. So what we see, and it is very specific right now to certain types of cancer. So prostate cancer is one that has a lot of research with this particular compound. So it's also associated with estrogen metabolism, which is why it has been, there's that link between that and breast cancer, that eating broccoli or Brussels sprouts or cabbage is associated with reduced breast cancer risk, because it is associated with how your estrogen receptors are expressing and how they actually bind to estrogen and then metabolize it.
Awesome. Okay. Now you talked about estrogen. So I'm confused on estrogen. Obviously, it is a hormone. Obviously, it has purpose in the body for both men and women. But soy. So maybe this goes to clinical nutrition. So I don't want to say is it good or bad, but, and I know there are varying levels for men and women, but high soy, how is that healthy? I'm like subconsciously biased towards veganism, and more so those that just eat all soy, and I just don't understand. Like, and again, I know it's genetics, because you have those of Asian descent that just, that's them, and they're completely healthy. There's some of your centurions and all that, but help me understand soy.
Kelly, do you want to take this from a clinical standpoint, or do you want me to?
You go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually a really good question. And you are absolutely right, Cailah. When it gets to some things like, especially estrogen metabolism, there is a lot of information out there that still needs to have more robust research behind it for us to better understand it. However, we know that some people, especially Asian descent, have variants where the factors in soy, which are estrogen mimicking, don't seem to affect them. So they can have high levels of soy without causing any type of issues. Now, somebody who might have variants where they would have issues with estrogen metabolism, having these estrogen mimicking compounds in soy, eating a high soy diet might then actually impact them and cause adverse health outcomes, or cause issues that we would prefer not to have to deal with.
Right.
So, yeah.
Is that expressed in genes, or is that the only way to find out, or you just blow up one day like, well, I went?
You might be predisposed to having problems with estrogen metabolism, but unless we actually are measuring, like going in for a blood test, we can't tell you with certainty what's going on now. So for somebody who may have issues with soy, it might be things such as bloating, discomfort,
Right.
having problems with maybe perimenopause or menopausal-like symptoms or hot flashes, anything like that where they're experiencing signs and symptoms that are related. That would be an indicator that maybe they need to go speak with their healthcare provider and see if there is actually an issue going on.
Okay, so we heard about soy from I want to say our geneticist, right? But what nutritionists?
That might be pushing it, but I'm in the world of genetics with nutrition.
Okay, now Kelly, okay, give me the clinical nutrition of it.
So your first question was, how do your genes affect your nutrition? And I think something you kind of alluded to earlier was that in the world of nutrition these days, there is so much information. Yeah. You can do a Google search on what diet is best for me, and you will get 3,000 plus results, So I think that using your genetics is kind of a neat tool to help give that guidance and kind of point you in the right direction in a world where information is abundant. And I think you are, leading, trying to help guide people to better sources, which is amazing because there is a lot of misinformation out there. So I think using your genetics can just help people kind of figure out, where do I start? So I just think that's kind of a neat approach. And again, I appreciate what you're doing. And I think that genetics is just another avenue that can help people with where to start. So from a nutrition standpoint, what we eat is really personal. It can be really overwhelming and hard to make changes. So just little things like, okay, my genes suggest that I might need a little more protein. Okay, I'll start there. So I think that's kind of a cool thing about our genes and how it can be helpful to have that knowledge about ourselves.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. All right, ladies. So on into the next one. And this is probably my most interesting question for myself. So relating to the African-American community, is there a nutrition style that you recommend as a whole?
Again, I think nutrition is fairly
I love the silence. That was awesome.
It's pretty personal, but if we look at kind of the broader picture and we go out a little bit more holistically, we know that African women are more prone to hypertension as compared to their white, Asian, or even Hispanic or Latino counterparts. Mm-hmm. So in that similar vein of thought, we've all heard of the DASH diet. So really being aware of your sodium intake, as well as saturated fat intake. Not meaning that you have to completely give up foods that contain it, but just being more aware of what you're actually consuming. Type 2 diabetes is also an issue, which even if you don't have type 2 diabetes, I think most of us, not just the African-American community, it would be very helpful if we all became a little bit more aware and of what our added sugar intake was, especially being able to better identify it on food labels. But if I was going to give one encompassing kind of nutrition advice, it would definitely be being aware of sodium intake and most likely saturated fat intake.
Okay. So sodium and fat, or saturated fat specifically, are your big takeaways for the African American community. That's super helpful.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you. So Kelly, same for you or different?
Absolutely. I think Kristen said it perfectly.
Awesome. Okay. So for me, again, I am not a registered dietitian. For me, it's interesting. And you guys know, and a lot of my followers know that I have been really big in keto and understanding, and not just for the diet per se, but just for the science of how your metabolism can physically change. Even in grad school, it was really hard to put a definition on what metabolism is, because it goes down to the cellular, and now I'm understanding the genetic level, and how that just the RDIs for sodium in America are lower than almost every other culture or country that even has them. And so now we look at, okay, well, what really is it? Is it the sodium or is it the processed foods? Like, what are we really talking about? So for me, my answer to that question would be not a particular diet per se or style, but eat whole foods. You know, I'm not going to say plant-based. I'm not going to say keto, you know, though I love keto. Okay. I'm just going to say eat whole foods, you know, even for someone who's addicted to sugar, addicted to whatever else, if they can cook it themselves, it's going to be a little bit better. Now we go whole foods, and then we go, all right, forget the processing. Let's forget the bleaching. Let's forget those extra things. So we go, if you're making a cake and you just decide to go, you know, cane sugar instead of regular sugar, I'm sure there's some type of benefit that might come from excluding the excess bleach in your system.
I think you're absolutely right that whole foods are a great choice for everybody, because we know that processed foods, especially ultra processed foods, have those hidden sugars that might be harder to find and see on the label. They're usually lower in fiber, and they usually also have higher sodium. So I think when you do take control, even if you're making bread, but you're making it at home, most likely it's going to be healthier than the store-bought version.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think you bring up a really great point.
All right. So next question, ladies. But we answered kind of the next one. It was about, well, for all humans, what's the worst types of food? And we all are just like processed and ultra processed, you know.
Yeah, we're in agreement.
All right. So again, it's another fun subject. We discussed a little bit earlier about the Ayurvedic principles, you know, and somatotypes and body types. So the question is, do your genes relate to somatotypes, or can they?
You know, I think that's a very interesting question. I don't know if I have a great answer right now. That would be one where it'd be really interesting to be able to look at the different types and see if there is a common genetic profile that we see carried throughout. I think that would give us a lot more information. I would not, with any degree of certainty right now, say absolutely yes or no. That's just something that we need more robust evidence behind before we make those types of associations.
Gotcha.
I think, yeah, as Kristen said, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know at this time if we have that connection, but I think that's a really interesting thing. But just one thing that I think we are all searching for is kind of like you're saying, like, what is the ideal diet for me? What, you know, how can I tailor my diet to me? And I think it's kind of a boring answer, but I think a perfect diet for anyone is what works for you. So if you read an article and it says you need to go keto, and if you don't feel interested in that, you don't like those types of foods, that's not going to be sustainable for you. That's not going to work for you. If you culturally, you like to eat certain foods and that's in your family and your preferences, and then all of a sudden somebody else is telling you eat these foods, you know, that might not be, again, sustainable or successful for you. But what might be successful for you is thinking about what you currently eat, and then maybe are there little swaps we can make? We were talking about, yeah, are there lower sodium options? Are there little changes I can make that make things less processed? And if it's sustainable for you and you enjoy it, I think that's the best diet for you. So I know that's not an exciting answer, but I think that's reality at this time. And like I said, I think you bring up a really great question, and I'm curious if we later find a link and we'll say, oh, okay, Coach Cailah was on it. She knew. But at this time, I don't know if there is anything to connect them. I'm curious, Kristen, if you have any thoughts too.
I think there are some factors that we could look a little bit more. We know that genetics also determine, you know, are you a fast twitch? Are you slow twitch when it comes to our muscle fiber type? Yep. Are you more likely to benefit from endurance training? Are you more likely to benefit from powerlifting? Unfortunately, I grew up in a family full of marathoners, and I am a power lifter. I played rugby in college, and so it was a completely different world, and I eat in a different way, and I unfortunately have to really watch what I eat, even though I border also on a mesomorph type of body build. With that being said, there are also other factors that we are always going to have to take into account when we're looking at a diet, because we are not just one set of genes. We are also our environment. We are also disease states. We are also what our grandparents ate, which I think is a really fascinating thing that we are going to get more in depth as we get into the world of nutrition, that we are what our grandparents ate and our grandkids are going to be what we ate. We are our stress levels. We are our work environment, our sedentary. And so there may be an ideal diet based upon your body type, and there might be a strong connection of the ideal foods based on your muscle mass, your metabolism. We know some people, your genetics might also make you more prone to be a faster metabolizer, or slow metabolizer. No, I can't talk. Slow metabolizer, which I think is unfortunately my case. And so to be able to better manipulate the foods. But we also have to keep in mind that we are more than just our genes. We are also our environment. And so that we also have to make sure that we are taking into account those factors and that we are setting ourselves up for success. And so like Kelly said, that maybe having an ultra high carbohydrate diet, low saturated fat is your ideal, but maybe you don't feel the best on it, or you're not performing, or it is making you, it's not the foods that you like. Maybe you're more prone. So we also need to find something that is sustainable, because genes also affect our taste. And so we have so many different factors that are interplaying here, that as we build on these layers, and as in our case, as our report is going to become more and more complex, that we are hoping that we can help build a bigger picture. And so we might not be able to prescribe the best diet for you, because we are not prescriptive, we're not diagnostic, but we can potentially tell you this is the best place to start, and start taking out some of those bad diets and that misinformation that's out there, to give a little bit clearer road and path of what's going to work best for you moving forward.
Now, Kristen, you said something super interesting. You said you are what your grandparents ate. So that leads me, I've never heard that before. That's awesome. So that leads me to believe that when you are consuming food, your environment, your food choices, they affect your genes on to what you pass down. Is that true?
Yep, absolutely.
Interesting.
And that's when we also can get more into like epigenetics, where you can use food, stress. We know exercise can also turn on genes, turn off genes. So when we have these different factors interacting, we can also then pass down those changes, those very small changes through our generation.
Now, in the African American community, I'll have two things, right? African American community, we always say that, as when we were slaves, we ate, what was given. We had the worst of the worst and this and that. And so, they gave us pig feet and pig intestines, and those are the worst things to eat. So if you're saying that we are, what our parents ate or what our grandparents ate, so that leads me to believe that though it may have been kind of the worst foods there, or the worst culturally identified foods, it may have changed our genes in a way that we could use that type of food for our benefit. You understand what I'm trying to?
Well, yeah, no, and it's completely evolutionary, but again, it goes into those interacting factors. So also during the slave times, they did not have a lot of downtime, right? So they were physically active all through the day. So they were also eating foods, hopefully, that were giving them energy in order to get through the day. So it might have been higher fat. Because they had such high water loss being out in the sun, they might have had higher sodium. And for them at that time, it was food that was helping them. Yep, exactly. So retain water. So, right. So there, again, it is multiple factors that come into play, that what works best for your eating patterns now, as you pass them down. Now that we have jobs where, a lot of us are guilty of being sedentary, working at a desk all day, not getting as much exercise as we want, high levels of stress, where that eating pattern and the genes that it might have influenced are not the most beneficial for us now. But that being said, if we are what our grandparents eat, the great thing is that we can also make choices to try to optimize our gene, optimize our health, and we can pass that down to our future generation.